We won't stop the killing. Every week of this trial, like every week of the past 7 years, will be measured by new Hiroshimas and by new lies, by the deaths and imprisonment of Americans, and by tens of thousands of new Indo-Chinese killed, wounded, or made homeless. We won't stop that. But this trial will inform the American public in ways that it's never heard before of how we've been governed in the past quarter century and what censorship and deception do to a democracy.
It's back. The theme from The Third Man. I think that's the first time since before Black History Month, right?
Yeah, it had to been at least a month. Yeah,
it's
almost 2 months. Yeah,
yes.
You're right.
It's been like sometime in.
Yeah,
maybe,
it's been a while. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, you're right.
It'd be January. Maybe not even then, because we did all those shows with Lawrence Wilkerson.
Right.
And we played a lot of Christmas music with
right,
Dmitry Polyansky, because Christmas in Russia is January 7th.
That's right.
So
I
haven't heard that tune in a long time. You know? The Third Man. Randy Credico, live on the fly on WBAI here in Brooklyn, in New York City, with Reggie Johnson. And got a lot of people on the show today, Reggie. You know, it's a diverse, internationally diverse. We have later on someone from Russia who's actually French, and someone from Africa who's actually Russian, and someone in Venezuela who's actually Scottish, and then our friend from Argentina, the editor of Página 12, who actually lived in New York City, not New York City, but Little Falls. But he's got an Irish last name, Sergio Kiernan. So it's an interesting international blend. And we got one woman on, so you can't say that I'm not honoring International Women's Month, all right? And I know, and we have Cuba, what's her name? Cuba
Niqua?
Yes, who I spoke to today. All right. We had a nice conversation. All right. So let's see. We have Craig Murray. Has he joined us yet?
Oh, he
just joined us.
You manifested him.
All right. So we have a lot. We're going to play his song, and then, like I said, later on we have Sergio, and you got to stick around. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about my trip to Russia and Ukraine with Arnaud Devaly and Julia Berg, Yulia, who's in. So you guys hold on, please, and we're going to play Craig Murray's theme song. And just let me say happy birthday to all of my friends who I have not seen over the last couple of weeks: Chuck Slatkin, Jeffrey Abrams, Steve Brown. Sorry. And for now, play that one. All right, we'll be right back with the ambassador, Craig Murray.
Here we go.
When I was young, it seemed that life was so wonderful, a miracle. Oh, it was beautiful, magical, and all the birds in the trees, well, they be singing so happily, oh, joyfully, oh, playfully, watching me. But then they sent me away to teach me how to be sensible, logical, oh, responsible, practical. And then they showed me a world where I could be so dependable, oh, clinical, oh, intellectual, cynical.
Supertramp.
There are times.
You know, I forgot the name of the singer. You know the name of the singer and the one who composed that music, right, Reggie?
Yeah, you caught me, man.
I know,
you caught me at that point. Yeah, it's not immediate. Yeah,
all right. Well, I know our first guest knows that
a big fan.
Big fan. If you read any of his books, And if you read his book right now, you really got to read. They're all great. The Murder in Samarkand is very relevant to what's happening today. And of course, his masterpiece, epic, Sikandar Burns, amazing. And I really want to talk about that today and how it relates to what's happening at this point in time. Ambassador Craig Murray, human rights crusader, former political prisoner, and a dear friend, and he has just arrived in Caracas. Welcome back, Craig. We miss you.
Thank you. Yes, I miss you, and I miss New York. I miss Reggie.
Yeah.
Thanks, Craig.
Yes. That's right. You were here with some fellow Scottish
with the Scots
activists, right? Independence activists.
We were indeed. Yeah, we were lobbying for Scottish independence at the United Nations, which was a very good thing to be doing.
Yeah. How is that going, by the way? Before we get started into that's serious. So, but before we get into war and lack of peace, how is the Scottish independence movement moving along?
It's really going very well. All of recent opinion polls have had over 50% of people in favour of independence, and there'll be a Scottish parliamentary election in May, quite soon, which all the polls show is going to return quite a large pro-independence majority in the Scottish Parliament. And also, and this is really interesting, for the first time in history, it looks like there's almost certainly going to be a pro-independence majority in the Welsh Parliament as well.
No kidding. I didn't know they were that active against British rule, because it essentially is British rule, right?
Yeah, very much so. And I think, there's been a big transformation in the last couple of years, especially with, the Labour Party becoming so right-wing in its economic policies and also so absolutely wedded to the Zionist lobby, in effect. And I think that UK government support for Israel during what everyone's seen as a genocide has led a lot of people to want to quit the UK who didn't necessarily want to before. I think it's opened a lot of people's eyes. And I do think that's a major factor. I mean, there are many other factors as well, including economic factors and obviously straightforward desire for national independence again. But I do think that's opened a lot of... I do think that's been a big driver in Wales, which has always been a Labour socialist majority country. But the Labour Party having abandoned socialism effectively, Welsh independence has become a real thing, which it wasn't at all 10 years ago even.
Isn't Arthur Scargill, is he from Wales? Was Wales Arthur Scargill? Or was he
certainly
Scottish?
Here, I think he's of Welsh descent. I'm not sure he actually comes from Wales itself. He's from Yorkshire, I think. But the other thing which you may have noticed, or you may not have from your side of the Atlantic, is that your friend and mine, George Galloway, has come out strongly in favour of Scottish independence and Welsh independence, and he was an important opponent before, so that's a big change.
Well, you know what? I remember, maybe you were on this show, you guys had a debate over it, right? You actually debated him, and you both made some cogent points, but of course you won because yours were, more, what's the word? Well thought out. I'll just say that. George is not like a British nationalist. I mean, a UK nationalist. He does. His roots are in Scotland. You listen to him talk. I don't know. You feel, since you were in the Foreign Office, that you are part of the British Empire, and there's or do you feel totally different with the nationality of being Scottish?
I feel very strongly Scottish, but I'm actually half English. My mother was English, so I have a foot in both camps to that extent. But I live in Scotland, and Scotland's been my home for most of my life. So no, I feel quite strongly Scottish. George's view was basically that working class solidarity is more important than national identity. That's what his view used to be. And that I can respect that view. It's an internationalist view. But he's come round, and he made a very good speech in Glasgow a few days ago, where he said, essentially, he said exactly those points I made when I was debating him, that the British state, the United Kingdom, is a force for evil in the world. It's been actively complicit in the genocide in Israel. We've got American bombers taking off from UK air bases, RAF Fairford in particular, and flying from there directly to bomb Iran and flying back again.
I thought that was shut off. I thought that was shut off by Starmer, that they couldn't do it. No?
He said, Starmer, as so often, said one thing and then did another. And he says these are, and this is true, I'm not making this up, I know this sounds incredible, but it's true. These are defensive bombings. He's only permitting defensive bombings of Iran, not offensive bombings of Iran. Wow. If a bomb lands on your head, I'm not sure whether you really care if it was a defensive bomb or an offensive bomb, but that's the official line. These are defensive bombings.
I mean, it's impossible. They're not attacking the UK. I mean, do you think that attack on the Diego Garcia, was that a false flag?
Well, there's no evidence it ever happened at all.
That's what I meant.
It could, if it happened, it could well have been a false flag. There's one very good journalist who, I don't know if you're aware of him. His name's Peter Hitchens. He was Christopher Hitchens' brother.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
And Peter is a conservative. I mean, Peter is somebody who promotes conservative values, but he's a very old-fashioned kind of conservative who values civil liberty and honesty and decency and all the things that other conservatives have abandoned. And he's completely against the war in Iran, and he's actually been pestering the Pentagon because allegedly one of his missiles was shot down by a United States warship, and he's been pestering them for details of exactly which warship shot it down, where and when, and what its trajectory was, and all that kind of thing, and being completely stonewalled. The Pentagon refused to tell him anything at all, and he's convinced that the incident simply never happened. It's just a complete invention.
Yeah. Well, I think so. So it's an invisible false flag. You get the impression. And they don't have a 2,500 kilometer range, these missiles, I do not believe. Maybe they do. But I think the usual suspect here would be Israel doing that to draw them in, some kind of false flag, because they can't do it on their own, whatever they're doing. I mean, they mercilessly today, they bombed civilian targets. And what do you think about that? They bombed civilian targets. There's been 3,000 dead, and then they complain whenever an errant missile from Iran kills a couple of Israeli citizens. I mean, we're talking about tens, maybe 20 Israeli citizens that have died. And Israel's killed 10,000 people over the last month between Lebanon, Gaza, and maybe Syria, and, of course, Iran. And they complain. They have the chutzpah to complain about it, like Iran is like the devil here. What do you make of that?
Israel are the perpetual victims. In any circumstance, they are the victims. It is quite extraordinary. And they've bombed over 600 hospitals between the Americans and the Israelis. They've bombed, over 600 schools. They've bombed in Iran so far more than 600 schools they've destroyed.
Are you Wow, I didn't know that. 600?
Yeah, that was out today from the Iranian Red Crescent. Yep, they've hit. I mean, it's a few days ago now. 4 days ago, the Iranian Red Crescent said that 50,000 civilian targets had been hit. 50,000. And these are just extraordinary numbers. But the weight of the bombing is enormous. I actually, funnily enough, I think the casualty figures are higher. I think, in fact, both sides are probably lying about the casualty figures. I think the Iranians are downplaying their civilian casualties. They're taking the opposite, if you like, version of the Israelis. They're downplaying their civilian casualties in order to maintain morale. I think actually a lot more people have been killed. It seems to me impossible that you hit 50,000 civilian buildings and you've only killed 2,000 or 3,000 people. That's just not going to happen. And of course, the Americans and the Israelis are keen to say they're not killing civilians, so they're downplaying it too. I think we will eventually discover that the civilian casualties are much, much worse than we've heard so far.
It's very ominous, very scary. And what about Israeli casualties? I heard Colonel Wilkerson yesterday saying that they're really substantial. He said the parts of Israel look like Dresden at this point, or look like Gaza the way it looks now. But it's impossible to get any confirmation on that. You can see a video here and there, but I mean, are there satellite videos or photos that are available so you could verify the amount of damage that has been inflicted on Israel on this constant the iron foam? It's not even an iron dome anymore. It's an iron foam. There's nothing there, and they're doing it at will. But what do you think the real situation on the ground in Israel is, damage-wise?
I wish I knew. It's so hard to verify, and all the sources that have access to satellite imagery, who normally are so keen to leak it, aren't getting any or even open source satellite imagery is not readily available, and is being heavily suppressed. My view is this the only reason for that can be that the damage is much worse than they want people to know. If the damage were very light, they would be making satellite imagery available to prove that. So my guess is it is very bad. And anyway, I would never argue with Larry Wilkerson about anything because he's got a brain the size of a planet. He's an extremely clever man. He's very unlikely to be wrong.
He's got a degree, a master's degree in English literature. Did you know that? Huh?
No, I didn't. But I'm not surprised.
Yeah, he's a very smart. So are you. I'm like, you both are above my pay grade, and I have to work real hard to try to keep up with you. I want to talk about about Persia, Iran. That going back in time, I was reading about the Abbasid Empire that lasted from 700 to 1258 when the Mongols came in and sacked Baghdad, which was the seat of power back then. They destroyed the House of Wisdom back then, but they came back 20 years later and kind of absorbed these Mongols into their culture, and they started speaking Farsi or whatever language that was prevalent then. Are you well versed on the history of Persia?
To a reasonable degree, I am. Mostly a little bit later than the period you're talking about. I mean, the period of the incredible bloom of Persian culture, which really sparked, was a huge impact on the Renaissance in Europe. A lot of that learning originated in Persia. And Persia in those days, of course, was much bigger. It included Samarkand and Bukhara and places like that, where they still speak Farsi, or Tajik, which is a variation of Farsi. But the time of Ibn Sina and the great astronomer Ulugh Bek, who made all the discoveries which were credited to Copernicus and others in Europe later. There was so much. Ibn Sina's discovery of things like the circulation of the blood, which was rediscovered years later. And we have all these, and they were doing vaccination. They were doing vaccination 100 years ahead of Dr. Jenner and smallpox. All the things Europeans claim to have invented were mostly copies of things that they'd been doing there. And that's, of course, not to mention the fantastic poetry of Omar Khayyam, Rumi. It was an incredible culture, and so much of that still remains. And particularly, I mean, one of the things which is so devastating is that the great seats of those cultures, places like Isfahan, are actually being bombed. This is a terrible crime against humanity, because these are some of the greatest achievements of human civilization expressed in architecture.
Right. Well, it's so that brings us to today. I mean, even though it's run by clerics by and large, and maybe that's like the main center of power, but they do have they do have a parliament, and they do still have this culture and this kind of resilience that you're seeing right now. Were you expecting the kind of resilience that they are demonstrating at this point, even though suffering a lot of damage and a lot of losses of human beings? That they've been able to shut down the Gulf of Hormuz, they've been able to hit Israel at will, wipe out 17 U.S. bases, and keep going on and on and on. How long do you think they can do it? Is it really in their spirit, in their blood? Is this an? How does is it eschatology? How does that fit into their way of thinking?
Well, there are a number of factors to that. I'm not surprised by their resilience. I did expect them to be still fighting. I did not expect them to be fighting as effectively as they are fighting. They're obviously their missile stocks and the way they have their missiles and launchers hidden or mobile or able to escape destruction. That is better than I anticipated. And obviously they have way more missiles. At the start of this, the Americans claimed that Iran only had 450 ballistic missiles left after the war last year. And then after, I think, 4 days, Hegseth and Trump claimed that they destroyed 80% of the ballistic missile launchers. And they've already launched at least twice as many, probably 3 times as many missiles as the Americans claimed that they had in the first place. And they're still launching, although to some extent their capacity is degrading. I actually think, and this is a bit of original analysis for you, I'd be interested to hear, it's a shame Larry Wilkerson's not with us, because I'd be interested to get his take on this. I actually think we're now in a key window, which probably only lasts 3 weeks. We're in a window when Israel is effectively more or less out of interceptor missiles, and particularly in the south of the country, because they've moved everything north to defend from Hezbollah and to try and defend Tel Aviv. The south of the country is completely open. There's no missile defense at all in the south of Israel. And Tel Aviv is getting patchier and patchier. I think we're only 2 or 3 days away from there being no effective Israeli air defense anywhere. And yet Iran still retains quite a lot of ability to fire missiles. I think that situation where Iran has an advantage lasts about 3 weeks. At the end of that 3 weeks, because Israel and the United States still have a pretty, and we have to be honest about this and not get over-optimistic or over-excited. Israel and the United States still have a pretty unlimited ability to bomb. They can send in wave after wave after wave of bombers and knock the hell out of civilian areas and destroy things and do as much destruction as they want. I think in 3 or 4 weeks' time, Israel and the United States probably will have succeeded in degrading Iran's missile ability to the extent that Iran really has very little ability to fight back. I think eventually that's going to be reached. So at the moment, we're in this kind of golden period for Iran, where Israel's missile defences are depleted and Iran still has missiles and still has working missiles. But I think that golden period only lasts 3 to 4 weeks.
You think they have an unlimited
that means
supply?
the lesson is Iran should hit Israel as hard as it possibly can just now.
But, it's 3 times the size of Iraq. It's the size of Western Europe. How do you degrade an entire country like that? I mean, even, Dresden is like, a localized area. We're talking about two Texases here. You know, how do you like degrade a country that size with hundreds of cities? They have 31 departments. They all have their own defense capability. They divided it up. I don't know where these missiles are coming from. It's like War of the Worlds. They're coming out of the ground.
Yeah. No, I mean, there are two different things here. One is pummeling Iran to the extent that it has to surrender, and that would take years. And the other thing is wiping out Iran's offensive missile capability, which you do by tracking where missiles are coming from, which they can do pretty effectively, and then bombing there. And bit by bit, it's not nearly as efficient as they would like to believe it is, but they are going to get there eventually, just by sheer bloody-minded destructiveness in effect, and just by bombing the hell out of any area where they think missiles might be coming from, and bombing any facility that they think might be involved in factory production, and using big 2,000-pound bombs that can then penetrate deep underground. All of that, I do think. I don't think degrading Iran's offensive missile capability will cause Iran to surrender, but I do think Iran probably can only cause significant damage to Israel for another 3 to 4 weeks before their offensive missile capability is too far damaged.
You don't think they're holding stuff back? You think they're spending at this point their best weapons? Are they doing what's called the rope-a-dope, Muhammad Ali's rope-a-dope, where he took a bunch of punches and saved all of his energy to like the 8th or 9th round and then unloaded on a superior power boxer, like George Foreman in Zaire, if you recall. I don't know. It's really, I'll tell you one thing that Larry Wilkerson said yesterday. He got it from Ted Postal, and he imparted it last night on one of these shows that I watched. I don't watch a lot of them anymore because it's like, everyone's saying the same thing, except for Wilkerson saying that he got information that Iran, in one of those deep, way down, 500, 600 feet under, they're working and close to building a nuclear or completing a nuclear bomb, and they'd be easily attached to some kind of warhead or missile that they have. Have you heard that? Do you think it's possible? How would that change? How would that change?
I think they'd be stupid not to, but it's not going to change anything unless people believe they've got it, and they would need to do. Once they do a test nuclear explosion, once they test a nuclear bomb, because that's how you announce you have them, and of course you'd want to test it anyway to make sure the thing works. So once they do, a deep underground nuclear bomb test, which people will pick up and know it's happening, then I think that will change the equation quite a lot. But just rumours of having one aren't going to change it. But I mean, frankly, they'd be mad not to, wouldn't they? Yes. In fact, if I were them, I would have done it years ago. I don't know quite why they've been so moral about it. One thing I will say about Iran, which people don't seem to have picked up at all, is Iran is scrupulous in observing international law. It really is, and always has been. It's always kept the Strait of Hormuz open in line with international law. It only bombs military targets. If it does hit civilian targets, it's not deliberate. And the tiny percentage of civilian targets it hits compared to the percentage of civilian targets Americans and Israelis hit is very, very noticeable. Yeah. And what Iran's currently doing with the Strait of Hormuz is absolutely in line with international law. What they're saying is the strait is still open to non-combatants. Any state which is not part of the coalition against it is welcome to sail through the Strait of Hormuz. But those who are part of a coalition against it in time of war cannot go through the strait. Now, that is absolutely in line with international law. That's exactly what you should do. It's extraordinary. Almost every single thing that the United States and Israel are doing is illegal, and everything Iranians are doing is perfectly legal.
Right. Well, Israel and the U.S., I mean, they have long rap sheets when it comes to international law. You know, you talk about 3 strikes and you're out. It's like 10,000 strikes, and both countries should be in prison for all the laws that they've broken. But you're right about one thing. You do notice it sticks out that Iran has been avoiding, because they don't see anything to it. I mean, it's like they don't see any benefit of hitting civilians. They're going after military targets and legitimate targets that are connected to the military somehow. But they haven't even hit the I can't even say the word desalination plants in Israel. And there's 3 or 4 of them there that they totally depend on. They haven't done that, and Israel has hit one of theirs, even though it's only 20% of what they use. But they could have done that. But they haven't. Why haven't they hit those whatever they're called? Can you say it for me? I can't say desalination. Yes, it's a word you don't say. A word you don't say that often. But why haven't they hit? Just for what you just said, that it would be a violation of international law to do that because you deny people of water, right? But Israel doesn't seem to have a problem with it, and it's. What about the nuclear option, Israel? If Israel is facing, they're down at the 1 yard line, they're trying to go 90 yards and score a touchdown to win a game, and they're already 21 points behind late in the fourth quarter, wouldn't they deploy a Hail Mary nuclear weapon?
Well, I don't think it has to be that desperate. I think Israel is quite likely to deploy a nuclear weapon even without things being terribly desperate for them. I think they've seen, if they can get away with genocide and nobody does anything about it, why wouldn't they get away with exploding a nuclear bomb in Iran? I wouldn't at all put it past them if they see it as tactically or strategically useful. Yeah. I really don't rule it out in the least. And as I say, people talk of it as a Samson option and what they would do at the last moment if they were under attack. I don't think you have to look at it that way. I think they are psychopathic enough that they would use a nuclear bomb simply to gain an advantage in the war. I can see them doing that very, very easily. There's no other country I'd say that about in the world. I wouldn't say it about North Korea. I think the biggest danger of use of nuclear weapon is the religious fanatical state of Israel.
Are they that insensitive to human life outside of the people that live within the unclear boundaries of Israel?
Yeah, but they've proven, there's no doubt at all that they are that insensitive to non-Jewish life. That's what it is, simply. They are the chosen people, and they have the right to lord it over everyone else, and anybody else who crosses their path ought to be completely destroyed and wiped out. And there are plenty of examples, not only of right-wing politicians, but of religious leaders in Israel saying exactly that.
Wow. It's very scary. What's the driving force here? I mean, keeping Trump in the game. Really, to get Iran. Is it we're blaming it all on Netanyahu, or is it because of big oil? Is it the CIA? Is it Epstein? What is it that's driving us in this direction? And there's no off-ramp at this point. I'm not even sure he wants one. Who's the ultimate beneficiary of this that is driving this mad rush for a nuclear holocaust in Iran? Who? What? What's the hidden hand here that I don't see?
It's the Epstein class who are all making money out of it. We know that Lockheed Martin announced that they got instructions from Trump to quadruple the production of THAAD missiles and triple the production of a different kind of interceptor missile 4 months ago. That plainly was premeditation. That was in preparation for this war. Since then, since last November, in fact, shares in Lockheed Martin have gone up by 40%.
Wow.
That's a lot of money. And shares in Chevron or Texaco or whatever, all the big oil stocks have absolutely boomed. So people have made a lot of money. But the real money, of course, is in futures. The real money is on people who knew a war was coming and therefore bought oil derivatives forward, betting on the price of oil going up. Those people made billions and billions. And as I'm sure you've seen, the other day when Trump came out and announced there were talks and everything was winding down and it was all going to be peace soon and the Iranians were being very reasonable. 5 minutes before that announcement, somebody sold $1.5 billion worth of oil futures.
They shorted
as a bet on the price of oil going up.
Just before he made the announcement on social media, right? Or True Social.
Yeah, exactly. And just before, and someone made billions, and that's what all this is about. And all of this apparent vacillation, I may do, it all moves the markets. And if you know what's going to be said in advance and which way the markets are going to move, you can become a billionaire overnight. And but of course, these aren't new billionaires. These are people connected to Trump who are tripped off. So the reason for the whole thing is making money. It's not, yes, they want to create greater Israel, but that's only because that colonial settler state in the heart of the Middle East gives them greater control of the oil region, which enables them to make money. It all comes down to money at the end of the day. And unfortunately, people are dying, children are dying, horrible deaths, children are being maimed and screaming in agony. But Trump and the people around him, and as I say, the Epstein class in general, are making a fortune out of this war.
Yeah, it's become some, not a cliche, but like a very strong slogan, the Epstein class. And I hear this guy, Dr. Morandi, is that his name, Dr. Morandi, the Iranian professor in Tehran? There's a price on his head. Do you know that someone put out $1 million? They're raising $1 million to kidnap him, Professor Morandi in Tehran, and they posted it on Twitter, and they're raising money. And Elon Musk did not throw it out of there. They've censored you for saying things much, much less than that. We're talking about kidnapping. Put it out on Twitter, and Elon Musk just let it go. Kidnapping, which means dead or alive, basically. Who is Elon Musk anyway? Where does he stand on all of this? I know his father is a little more enlightened than he is, but how does he gain on this? And what are his prejudices?
I have a good friend who maintains my website on the technical side. He does all the behind the scenes dashboard work and all the work on fighting viruses and that kind of thing. And he's a very quiet guy, but he spends a lot of time doing deep research into things. And he told me about 5 years ago, he told me that Elon Musk was a genuine fascist and an extreme right-wing racist with racist views that came straight out of apartheid South Africa unchanged, and was an enormous danger to society. And maybe it was even more than 5 years ago he told me this. And at the time I'd never heard anyone say anything bad about Elon Musk, so I was rather taken aback, and I wasn't sure I knew what he was talking about. But I think he got it right, and that does appear to be the case. Right. Everything shows that Elon Musk is a very, very dangerous far-right racist figure, whose support for Israel appears to be unequivocal, who has taken over Twitter with the publicity saying he was going to make it more of a free speech platform, and actually has used it massively to censor speech, which doesn't agree with his own views.
Totally specious, because I even look at you used to get like thousands of retweets on a lot of stuff, and some of the most, and you still do, but there are times where I see, well, Craig only got 89 or 100 retweets on this, and like something really explosive. Do you feel that you're being shadow banned?
Oh, undoubtedly, yeah. No, very much so. I mean, what one of the very worrying things in society that I don't know how we get around is that the internet is not nearly as free as it was 10, 15 years ago, and that the gatekeepers, it's now much more channeled, if you like, through corporate gatekeepers than it was, and Meta and Twitter and a couple of others really do control the flow of traffic. And if you try to run an independent website, still 90% of your traffic comes through those social media organizations. And all of them, literally absolutely all of them, now we've seen what's happened to TikTok and others, are under the control of absolutely ardent right-wing Zionists. And it's had a major effect. The internet used to be, there was this tremendous feeling, particularly around the time, of course, of the WikiLeaks revelations, that the internet brought this great new freedom, this great new ability to mankind to reach out and connect with each other and learn things, and a democracy of knowledge. Whereas, in fact, it's now become almost the opposite. It's now become an extremely targeted tool for forcing right-wing views down people's throat.
Well, they round you up and they put you in a corner, and that's where they leave you. And you think that you've got like some freedom of speech here. But, I stop. I tweet once in a while, but I know it's not going to go anywhere, especially if it's like that truck I was driving around, the Israeli truck, the Palestinian truck. That thing just sits there, never gets anything on Facebook or on, it used to get a lot. And then the next thing I knew, I think it was 5 months ago when Netanyahu was in town, he got all the trucks. He got all of the LED trucks, like the ones that I use. He got like all 12 of them that are in the city that are available, and used them with a QR code on it that shows you, it takes you right to October 7th when he was speaking at the UN. So I suppose that they're aware. I mean, their intelligence in this city must be tremendous. With Shin Bet, and I don't know if them. I'm sure they have Mossad here, but they must keep tabs on anyone that does anything, because they can't take any criticism whatsoever, any at all. Is that your feeling, that they're just like can't take it at all?
And I'll tell you something. Which is very telling, I think. If you remember when you and I together were at the first Julian Assange hearings, when his long, lengthy legal process started, right. The first 5 days or so were at Woolwich Crown Court, and we were at it together. Then every day I was producing the account of what had happened that day. And those daily accounts I produced, 3 million people were reading them every day on my own website alone. And they were mirrored and copied and translated and put out on hundreds of other websites. But just on my own website, 3 million people were reading them. And those people were coming from Facebook and from Twitter and from all the Google, whatever. And people were finding this is where you could actually learn about the case, which was very hard to learn about anywhere else. Then there was a break for several months, and then the hearings resumed at the Old Bailey.
Right.
And I did exactly the same thing. I attended every day and produced a daily account. And now, instead of 3 million, 10,000 people a day were reading my accounts from 3 million. Yeah. And it's because they were just absolutely, but any link to them on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or anywhere just got shut down. I mean, it didn't actually get deleted or closed down. It just got no reach whatsoever. So when I was putting out tweets for the first time linking to my program, those tweets were getting a million views, and now they were getting 2,000 views.
I
You-
saw
you-
you.
and-
I saw you every day there for those 4 days that I was there, and you'd watch the trial. You'd be sitting in the corner with Julian's brother and father, and then we'd go out for lunch, come back, and then we'd go out to the I forgot the name of that place, that huge saloon. I forgot the name of it. It's like 9 stories. But and then we'd talk until 10 o'clock, and you'd go speak somewhere, and then you'd get home and write like a 5,000-word article and post it, and come back queuing at 6 in the morning the next day. Do you recall? I don't know. How do you do that?
Yeah. No, I did 4. It's true. I did 4 nights completely with no sleep whatsoever. I think it's the restorative powers of whiskey.
Wait a second. I thought you did scotch. No,
Absolutely.
Right. What I would recommend is you take all of those writings all the way through to the very end, and every court proceeding that you and stuff that you did away from the court when it wasn't happening, and make it into a book. From the very beginning of those trials. I mean, that would make a great book, seriously, because it'd be 100 pages just, from Belmarsh alone. So you went on.
Oh no, we yeah. That's true. Belmarsh alone would be 100. Yeah, we've got. I mean, all books are keen to do it. They've asked me to do it, and in fact, it would really be a cutting down process, because there are probably 3 books there, so it needs a little editing down. But yeah, it would be quite interesting to do. And as you know, there's a lot of humour in my account.
Yes,
It
was great.
There's despair and hope and genuine principle and genuine anger, but also humour, because you have to. People don't want to read unremitting misery for hundreds of pages.
It was Lord Byronish, all right? I mean, or Oscar Wilde-ish. I mean, seriously, you could read it and you could laugh, and you have comments to make about the prosecutor, the way she was dressed or he was dressed, and the U.S. Dudes from the DOJ. You had the great commentary on them, and then of course the judge. It wasn't Arborough. Who was the judge in that first week? Was it?
Was Beretsa was the first judge?
Oh yeah, yes. What a horror show, So, they were very colorful, and you're right. You can't just read it like an encyclopedia. You got to read it the way you write it. It's great prose, and I recommend that you do it. Now, we could talk about this all day. And have you spoken to Julian since he got out?
No, we message each other. We speak very seldom because he's in Australia, but we message each other all the time. We messaging each other just today, in fact.
How's he doing?
Very well, I think. He's much better. His recovery process was really quite slow. I'm not sure people realised how difficult that was for him. But he's greatly improved now. He's not keen to spend a lot of time in the public spotlight anymore. I think he's done that part of his life.
Right.
But he is working on a lot of things behind the scenes. His relationship with me is a tiny fraction of 1% of what he does. But I'm here in Venezuela, and he's in touch with me and advising me, and in touch with other people about that. And so, he's very, very active behind the scenes, trying to build alliances and organize things.
Okay. It's good to know.
His,
that damage. Listen, my father did 10 years in jail, 10 years in a terrible prison. If you saw Shawshank Redemption, that's the prison that he was in when he was 22 till he was 32. And it never left him, the scars. And I worked with prisoners for many years, and they never come out. Even that short period of time that when you were framed and you were a political prisoner, I know that had an impact on you. I mean, you must still look back at the 4 months that you were in that jail in Scotland?
Yeah. Yeah, 4 months
Do you think
in
about
solitary
it?
confinement the entire time. Yeah.
Do you think does that have any effect on your psyche still, thinking back at those days?
I'm sorry to say, but strange enough, it didn't in my case.
Right.
I think I'm, we all have our different psychology, if you like, and I was very fortunate because I was a civilian prisoner, not a criminal prisoner, a distinction in Scotland, because I was in for contempt of court. I was allowed any books I wanted. For example, I was allowed pen and paper and stuff. So I studied a lot. I read a great deal. And when I read a book anyway, I always feel like I'm in a conversation or discourse with the author. I've always looked at books that way. For me, it wasn't too different to the final stages of writing a book. I know this sounds trite, and I don't want to. I don't want to diminish or make light of anyone's pain or suffering who's been in solitary confinement or be in prison. But for example, when I finished Secunda Burns, which you're kind enough to mention, I spent 7 years doing the research in libraries all around. In libraries and archives all around India and all around the UK and all around Pakistan and places.
It's an amazing work, by the way, folks. Secunda Burns, you can get it.
Thank you.
No, I'm serious. You know what? I don't have a copy. I lent it to Scott Ritter last year when we were having lunch. He said, "Can I read that book?" And I gave it to him, and I haven't seen him since. So I want that book back because it's autographed by you.
Well, funny enough, I don't think I've got a copy left either. They've all been given away, and
I bought 4 of them when I
tin.
was in Edinburgh. I bought 4 of them. I brought them back, and you signed them all. One for Margaret. Maybe Scott's got Margaret's copy.
There you go.
And I sent one to Oliver Stone, who wanted to do a movie on it, if you recall.
What? We need to get back to him. We need to do that.
Yeah.
But
we have 3 minutes left. We have 3 minutes left.
I was going to say that after 7 years of doing the research, I then spent 6 months effectively just locked in a room all day, 24 hours a day, writing the thing. So that kind of concentrated period where it's me and books and thinking is how I work, if you see what I mean. So 4 months locked in with myself, but with as much books and paper and pens as I wanted, I was actually all right. I know it sounds absolutely horrible and crazy, but I got through it genuinely, I think, without much mental scarring. The only mental scarring came from my worrying about other people, came from contact. I had very little contact with other prisoners. Basically, when I was getting my lunch and when I was getting my dinners, well, that's the only time I got to speak to people. But I saw enough to realise that the vast majority of people who are in jail because of poverty and nothing else. They're from the poorest sections of society. They get into terrible poverty, or they're born into terrible poverty. That results in addiction. They steal to feed their addictions, and then they're jailed and society locks them away. In some cases, when people have had multiple convictions for many, many years. And they're people who are really victims rather than, they're not people the vast majority of people in prison, certainly in Scotland, are people who've never done anything other than petty theft. They've never hit anyone or hurt anyone or they're really people who need treatment rather than imprisonment. And the traumatic part of it for me was how sorry I felt for the wretched lives of so many of the people in there.
Yeah, that's the same way Steve Donziger felt when he was in jail. There were people there that couldn't believe they were there for minor. Well, I've made 300 prison visits in my lifetime. It got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't have the wherewithal, the spiritual wherewithal to keep going back. It just drove me crazy, insane.
You have a great history that you don't talk about enough, where you did fantastic work in getting particularly people from the black community in New York, but others as well, in
gotta
getting
keep
people
mo-
out
you
of
gotta
jail who shouldn't be in jail. And you should be really, I'm proud to know you. I'm proud to know you anyway, Randy, but I'm very proud to know you because of the work you did on that
Do you
some
love
years
me
ago.
enough?
But
Do you love me enough if I get Wilkerson back next week? Because I do want to talk to you about Cuba and Venezuela, and you just got into Venezuela, but I'd like to continue this discussion with you. The people are loving it, and but I have other guests I got to get on for the second hour, and they're from all over the world, and you don't want to stick around for that, do you?
I can't, unfortunately,
All right,
because
it's happy hour.
I'm in Venezuela. I haven't had my first mojito of the day.
Right.
Randy.
Have your first mojito. You're getting me excited there.
It's good to have priorities, Craig.
That's Reggie. That's Reggie. All right. So he says it's good to have priorities. Now listen, I'm giving you an invitation to come back, and we'll get Wilkerson on next week. And I want to talk about Cuba and Venezuela, which we didn't even touch today. That was a fascinating, quick hour. I love you too, Craig, and I have a lot of respect. And thank you for all the great work you've done throughout your lifetime. Craig Murray, we'll talk to you next week. Can you give me a semi-promise that you'll come back?
I certainly will if I possibly can. I don't entirely know my itinerary in Venezuela if I'm traveling at that moment or something, but if I possibly can do it, I will.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Craig Murray. I don't know. We have some guests coming up. They're all waiting. We'll be right back in just a few minutes because we're at the end of the world, it seems.
Meet again. Don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do. Skies drive the dark clouds far away. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. Again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know
Randy Credical live on the fly here with Reggie Johnson and no Sophia today. WBAI 99.5 FM in New York City. Man, that went by quick, that hour. We are, it was a year ago, today or tomorrow, I don't know. I flew to Dubai. I was there for a couple of days, and then I headed to Moscow and had 16 of the greatest days of my life. And it wouldn't have been possible without Julia Berg, who really organized the entire trip for a bunch of journalists to go from Moscow to Donetsk and to Mariupol and all that. And she's she works with BRICS. She puts together all of these conferences and a lot of it. And she's a political science major. She used to live in the U.S. And she's in Africa right now, the Republic of Congo at this moment. And and we're supposed to have Arnaud, who was Arnaud as well. So Arnaud Devaly is an international legal expert who actually worked with our friend, the late Ramsey Clark, on the trial of Saddam Hussein, and he's a journalist, French, or he's actually from France, as I said earlier. But Press TV, he's an award-winning journalist, and it's great to have both of you back the last time I saw both of you, I think, was a place called, as I was leaving, where was it? I know it was Dr. Zhivago. Am I right?
That's right.
Julia? Can we hear?
Yes, that's what it was. I confirm.
And I was looking at some pictures of the day before we left, okay? And that we were, and one of the pictures has me like giving some kind of treatment, like mock treatment to Arnaud, like first aid treatment. You know, we got first aid training for a couple of hours, and I said, "I'm leaving. I'm not. I can't." Someone said the green zone, the red zone, and somehow you guys took me to Dr. Zhivago to say, "Okay, we'll say goodbye to you. Let's go have a drink." And the next thing you know, after like 3 bottles of Russian Standard, I was on a train in a car with you, Arnaud, to Rostov.
The Batmobile.
Yeah. No. The first it was the train, that 20-hour train ride.
That's right.
The finest train I've ever been on. You know, a great dining room. And so the two of you, I know, do you two keep in touch with each other?
Of course.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So you are you're in Moscow right now, and Yulia, you are in Republic of Congo. And what are you doing there?
Well, as always, as you have rightfully mentioned, what I've been doing for more than a decade by now is working on international relations. So I'm now here in Congo to develop relations with the Russian Federation. A couple of days ago, we've just celebrated 62 years of diplomatic relations between the Republic of Congo and the Russian Federation, and a lot has been happening. And we have opened a new organization here, an association that has been active on research and on practical activities. So, yes, actively working in Africa.
Right. I mean, is there like MI6, CIA, French, whatever, Belgian, agents trying to sabotage the country? Has it been able to be free from that kind of interference?
I don't think there is anyone free from that kind of interference, and the ambition of those guys is not limited by planet Earth, not even that. So, of course, here, especially in the French-speaking Africa, there is quite a heavy heritage of colonialism and neo-colonialism, because even issues of their financial system are completely dependent on decisions made in Paris or, behind Paris, because they're still using what used to be called the colonial franc as the currency, and the exchange rate is set by Paris. Most of the financial and gold reserves are kept in Paris, and Paris has a tremendous influence over both of the key areas of any state, which is financial policy and politics, generally speaking. So some people here still think that in order to get a position in the country, they have to first have an approval from France.
Wow! So I can blame it on your people there, Arnaud. Arnaud, is he there? Wait, did we lose him? He's there.
He seems to be still here.
Yes, can you hear me?
Did you hear what she was saying? And
of course. Yes.
So now I'm asking are you the guilty party here, the French?
Yeah, of course they're going to try to grab and hang on to what they believe is theirs. As a given, I guess. But what you have to understand, it's kind of a middle, it's a very subtle approach, because, I mean, you can't just remove cultural ties at the same time. So it's important for Africa to chart their own course without succumbing to the temptation of scorched policy as far as the ties that they've established. So while this requires renegotiating every contractual, every agreement bearing on resources, so as to reflect a more equitable sense of redistribution, i.e., pay me what it's worth on the market so I can have the means to develop my own country. You don't want to throw the baby and the water away. So it's not as black and white as people make it sound to be. And so we are trying, the Free French movement, the French resistance, to conceptualize a relation where Africa can chart their own course, choose their partners, but at the same time maintain a sense of kinship, because again you can't just erase a couple of hundred years of common history. I mean, Francophonie is a very important aspect. It's right now where I'm working on a project which basically is the axis of resistance, Paris, Moscow. It's east-west, but it's also north-south, the Francophonie. And we believe that Francophonie can, be a common ground to allow, a relationship to move forward in a sense that it will benefit everybody, take into account the sovereignty and the interest of everybody, and be complementary with what Africa on some of the countries, but eventually above and beyond those countries we hear a lot in the news these days, can have a complement. It's a win-win situation. It's a virtuous cycle, and I think it will help. It can help those African nations to also, deepen their relationship with the Russian Federation, as it were, and have a sense that they are not being squeezed one way or another. It's going to take a lot of time, because obviously, the exploitation has been so pronounced and for so long now, the last 60, 70 years. But it requires a change of regime in France, first and foremost.
Right.
And so, that's where we're working on, first and foremost. And at the same time, one of the ways to somewhat accomplish this change of regime, this change of paradigm in Paris, is to work on maintaining, good kinship, family ties with African countries.
I'm surprised they're not coming to the aid of their former colony, Lebanon, at this point. It's just, you take a look. The French have been there for a long time. It goes way back to the the conference in Berlin in 1884, 1885, and 1888, dividing up that continent and raping it of everything. How do the people feel there, Julia, about continuing the Francophone and having French investors or gold miners or whatever they have there? How do they feel?
Well, Arnaud has just mentioned a very important thing, I guess, and the talking about cultural aspects and common history and the contribution that was made by the French in terms of development of certain areas. Definitely, it could never be forgotten and erased, but another key word mentioned there was sovereignty, and that's exactly what's lacking, and that's exactly what I was referring to when talking about the financial system and political system still being dependent to a great extent to the decision-making process in Paris, which is now changing quite a lot, because I think it started or it was restarted during the pandemic, when a lot of people really started asking themselves questions on why they have to go through all of the restrictions and limitations when COVID is definitely not the worst problem that many African nations are facing. I mean, there are diseases that are much more deadly. There are war conflicts. There are ongoing problems even with access to clean water and electricity. So why would COVID be a reason for closure of pretty much everything, and why would they need to have police and army patrolling the streets in order to keep people at home? So I think at that point, people started asking a lot of questions, and the French media leaked quite a lot of uncomfortable statements made by experts and politicians in France that were almost clearly saying that Africa could become a testing ground for the vaccine, or that decisions on vaccines are not to be made by African leaders themselves. So we need to really divide those issues, right? Political, economic, and cultural aspects, because those are really different. And going back to the question of the sentiment in French-speaking African countries, I've visited quite a lot of them, and of course the situation is very different. Even being here in Congo Brazzaville, it feels very different comparing to the country across the river, the DRC, the Congo Kinshasa.
That was going to be my next question, because I want to move on to a lot of topics about the Democratic Republic of Congo, which was settled by the Belgians or raped by the Belgians, and it ended up being Zaire, and Lumumba was overthrown and all of that. What's the difference, quickly, before you go on, between those two countries? Because some people get confused, and I'm one of them.
The difference is huge, simply because the Belgian King Leopold considered DRC to be, or at that point it was Zaire, even before that, he considered it to be his property and his playground. So the cruelty and the amount of people killed was, I'm not sure if we can legally define it as genocide, but it's somewhere close to that, because the country lost over 20 million of population due to King Leopold's rule. And if we're talking about Congo Brazzaville, just across the river, the situation was completely different, and the city is actually called Brazzaville in the name of its founder, Brazza, who was of French-Italian descent. And he was believed to be a very soft governor. He even tried, and he accomplished that. He signed an agreement with one of the local kings. Well, the legend says that he kind of tricked him into signing, as the document was in French and it was translated not exactly as it was written. Yet at the same time, he at least tried to negotiate. He never imposed such cruelty on the local population. That's why here the sentiment is very different. I mean, you just cross the river, and those are completely different communities with different attitude towards, let's say, Europeans. And it's a completely different economic situation and so on. But Congo, the DRC, Kinshasa, they're just not lucky to have so many natural resources that are of interest for the U.S., for China, and for many others. So there is an ongoing conflict in the regions of Goma and around them. And, just like in that joke, that says that Americans found oil, and over it they happened to find some Arabic country. So it's pretty much the same, but with an African country, unfortunately, being situated over rare earth metals and much more.
All right. Well, going over the river, I can identify with that, because it's a lot different crossing the Hudson River from here and going into Jersey. It's a totally different people on the other side. I'm just kidding, Jersey. And the same thing, crossing this river's okay. The East River's okay. Yeah, going into Brooklyn, all right? Going to Brooklyn and Manhattan is totally different. Arnaud, we gotta move and talk about the situation there in Russia and Ukraine. What is the status? Because you're getting so much disinformation from the West. You got, these nutcase Russophobes in the EU and NATO, particularly Kaya Kallas and the other Nazi, what's her name, van der Leyen, and the new one who's head of the MI6. What is your overview of where we stand right now, or where Russia stands? and Ukraine?
Well, to be sure, I mean, there's been a rounds of negotiations, mostly bearing out on humanitarian issues, because to make a long story short, I mean, the Ukrainian regime is hell-bent on basically rejecting reality on the ground, and they feel like they've got enough backup still to behave as if, they're in a position where they have the initiative, which is not the case. And they've weathered the initial, so was it theater in the Oval Office initially, or was it just something that might have been, bearing on reality? We'll never quite know. At least as of right now, we don't know. But suffice it to say that the Green Goblin, as somehow want of calling him, is feeling somewhat confident enough that he can turn down any injunctions bearing on him providing substantial leeway so as to move forward in beginning resolving the conflict. And one of those main issues is basically to withdraw unilaterally from the Donbass areas, and President Putin has been quite clear on this, that if the Ukrainian armed forces were to unilaterally withdraw from the administrative borders of the Donbass area, i.e. DPR and LPR is pretty much 94% free, but DPR is still about, I would say, 22%. We'd be in a position to begin talking about a ceasefire, but he's refused that.
Well, wait a second. Who wants a ceasefire? I thought that.
Well, that's interesting because the U.S. keeps saying we want a ceasefire, and the Europeans want a ceasefire. But what's the point to get a ceasefire under current circumstances?
No, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Say what?
I say it's crazy. Go ahead. I'm just talking to myself.
Yeah.
It's
well, I mean, there's no point right now. I mean, the Russian armed forces are moving forward steadfastly. I mean, it might be perceived as slow, but we have to take into account that the loss of life is at a premium. So we want to make sure that we prevent needless loss of life. And so it's a systematic grinding operation where we create cauldrons and we isolate entire, swabs of Ukrainian armed forces and prevent them from getting access to supplies until they surrender, and we just basically take chunks and chunks away from them, trying to preserve even their lives because, let's remind our listeners, this is a civil war essentially between Slavic people. So
right.
There's no interest in Moscow to go full out and shock and out. This is not. A lot of people in the West are reasoning in terms of video games. Why doesn't he go in and just but because we have to live with those people. I mean, they're right next door. It's been like this for centuries, and it's likely to remain that way. So it's not just like go in and just blow things up and no, it doesn't work like this.
Right, exactly.
At the same time, because it is an existential issue for Russia, and because it has over time now turned into an existential issue for not Europe but the European Commission. They have a lot riding on the conflict being maintained, even though militarily speaking, the reality shows that it's a lost cause. But they are trying to basically keep appearances until somehow they perceive that they can get someone more aligned with the project, the Ukraine project, the neo-colonial and the proxy war against Russia, inflicting a strategic defeat against Russia. If they can get a Democrat back into the Oval Office, that will be something more, aligned with what the EU is looking for. So right now they're trying to somewhat bridge the gap between Trump's inauguration last year and most likely the midterm election and next January with an incoming Congress, which will most likely be dominated by Democrats.
Yeah.
And we can supputate, we can imagine that there will be a renewed premium on providing U.S. weapons and U.S. monies.
Well, this has been Trump's war. I mean, Trump's war for 4 years.
It's now turned into Trump's war. You are right.
But it was from 2016 on, and then Biden stepped it up, and then Trump. I ask you, Julia, do you think that Trump has been serious about these negotiations going back to Anchorage? Julia? What's your feeling?
Well, it's way too complicated to have it resolved after just one meeting. And I mean, I suppose the key topic to discuss there was how to balance up the great powers and superpowers over the map. So I think that negotiation did provide some hope, but it's very difficult to stick to the points agreed, as we see. And I mean, from the Russian point of view, it's becoming almost impossible to even take the European and in some cases American partners seriously, because one thing is being said, one thing is being signed, and another thing actually happens.
Right. Arnaud, it seems right now the Russians are on the move. I look at these casualty figures every day through Andrei Martyanov. He gets them from Colonel Popov, and they're pretty dramatic, the amount of loss of life of Ukrainians. And it seems like right now that you have these hardcore Azov, right sector, whatever, with the help of the MI6 and CIA, committing terrorist attacks and not fighting on the battlefield. Arnaud, is that the view there?
Yeah, it's exactly what's been going on. Going back essentially to October 2022 and the bombing of the Kerch Bridge. We've had then the Crocus Center Hall terrorist attack on March 24th, 2024. And most recently, we've had 3 or 4 days ago, one of the largest export port in the Leningrad region was subjected to a massive drone attack by the Ukrainian forces. But we know for a fact that they would not have been able to accomplish such feat without intelligence from the UK, to be sure, and most likely the US as well. They've been using long-range missiles as well. Belgorod is constantly being shelled. Bryansk is constantly being shelled. We also have a lot of drones attack. A couple of days ago, we have a major drone attack on Sheremetyevo Airport, which is one of the international airports out of Moscow, which a lot of flights were grounded. Hundreds of them were actually canceled. And we've had targeted assassinations as well on senior military staff, including the number 2 of GRU, who participated in the negotiation in Abu Dhabi a couple of months ago, and he was not, he was on his way. I mean, he had barely been back in Moscow that the Ukrainian unleashed a killer on him. So he managed to, survive, but he was not the last one. He probably won't be he wasn't the first one. He won't be the last one. All this to say that whatever you want to call it, the Ukrainians more than ever and their sponsors intend to win this conflict out. They're not showing any sign of abating, any signs of slowing down, any signs of wanting to, in good faith, negotiate in order to begin resolving the conflict. It's actually a world war, and now we have the Iranian front that just basically kicked in, and it's all connected. Whichever way you want to look at it, it's the stakes are enormous because it's multipolarity on one hand and a fading empire on the other, and it looks like the Davos agenda might be getting a second wind as well, because now, owing to the bombardment of the gas and oil facilities in the Gulf countries, the European unilaterally depriving themselves of cheap Russian gas. We had a huge refinery in the Gulf of Mexico in Texas going up in flame about a week ago. And we have this Russian major port, if not the major export port being somewhat partially disabled, it looks as if it's a concerted plan to basically artificially create energy scarcity. So we also have to keep that in mind. There's more than meets the eye here.
Yulia, I want to talk about Russophobia. I mean, here, Zelensky's like the great patriot. Thomas Jefferson really wasn't a great guy, or George Washington really wasn't a great guy, and Winston Churchill definitely wasn't a great guy. But they pump him up, they make him an icon. But in the meantime, he has supported the coup attempt or whatever, the kidnapping of Maduro. A, B, he has supported the genocide in Gaza. You folks listening? He's supporting the war on Iran right now, and basically, everything that I stand against, this guy is for. Why do you? It's just like, how do people brush over this and gloss over the fact that this guy, and plus he's a complete scoundrel. And why? What is it about people in their head, particularly even in this station? You hear shows that people are so up to their neck in Russophobia. What do you ascribe it to?
Well, if we talk about Zelensky, in the first place, he's not a politician, but he is a showman. So what he's good at is acting, right? And I just want to remind how he was elected. So there was a media project first that was called The Servant of the People, which was the name of a political party created first in those episodes. And then there was an actual political organization created. And just to remind, the political platform, let's say, promoted using those episodes when in the movie Zelensky was elected eventually as a president. It was based on good relations with Russia. It was based on sovereignty, and there were quite a lot of moments in the show when the President Zelensky of the show would stand up for the interests of the Ukraine itself. So people were kind of tricked into that media manipulation, and that basically explains why he got the support he received. Because the president of Ukraine at that period of time, Poroshenko, was for intensifying the war, or what they call the anti-terrorist operation in the eastern regions of Ukraine at that point. They were anti-Russian, and he was quite corrupt. So people perceived Zelensky as a breath of fresh air. Young, ambitious, funny, quite smart as he seemed, but he was never a politician, a person who was doing all the indecent things when he was young and when he was older as well. A person who has no proper background, no proper education, cannot be really perceived as a politician himself. So he definitely, at that point, he had people behind him that were telling him what to do, and that's what's he's still doing, just playing the role, even though it's becoming more and more difficult. So, given the decisions that he was making from the very beginning of let's say 2022, those were not really smart and strategic decisions focused on the interests of the people. That was never the case. So he just runs a project, and the project itself, to a great extent, is based on show. I mean, the amount of fake news coming out of Ukraine and the attempts to emotionally trigger people into certain way of behavior, and the radical ways that are being promoted in Ukraine, the crazy Russophobia, hatred, and sometimes it results into completely crazy activities. But if you look at the policies, political competition is just non-existent in Ukraine. Media is strictly regulated. Religion is being used as a tool as well, and what is called the Ukrainian Orthodox Church right now, it's just nonsense. I mean, it's anti-religious, and it promotes quite destructive values, as a matter of fact. So it's a very sad situation, also because we already have definitely more than 1 million of basically brothers and sisters dying on both sides. And when I say brothers and sisters, I mean it literally, because the ties that are existing between the people divided by, the
artificial territory,
the border,
artificial lines. Because I'm reading Brothers Karamazov. I had to read it twice, and get a sense that Odessa and a lot of these other cities are Russian. They are Russian, and I guess they become nationalist Ukrainians. But and people who are Russophobic. The predicate there is racism, because you got Slavs killing Slavs. And in fact, when Arnaud and I were in Donetsk, I asked somebody. It was Andre. I said, "These Ukrainians are great fighters, man." And you know what he said? You remember this? He says, "Of course they are. They're Russian."
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Listen, I only got 2 minutes left. I'm going to bring you guys back, because you guys make a good team here. I got overloaded with a lot of. I got a guy from Argentina coming up to talk about Cuba in a few minutes. You got 2 minutes left, Arnaud, and kind of wrap it up. Give us a global perspective of the next 2 minutes, if you can. All right, and I'm going to play Moscow Nights for you. Arnaud?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, so you got the last couple of minutes here. We got 2 minutes left. Give us your whatever you can add on to what.
It
what
looks,
she said.
if anything, as if international law has completely disappeared. The UN system is completely out, shopping to the dogs. And we have crazies in the White House. We had genocide going on for 2 years plus, still ongoing now. We have a lot of eschatological discourse being peddled around at the state level, at the highest level in major states. And again, we are walking on eggshells these days. So we are basically hoping that cooler heads and reasonable people will prevail. But, it's a very, very, as the Chinese used to say, may you live in interesting times. We are right in the smack midst of it right now. And, we have to somewhat try to wrap our head around what's going on, and not get all, hyped up, into the emotion of it. But there will be a before and an after, to be sure. The historical sequence is accelerating right now, and it's not just a matter of years. I think we could be living in a completely different world by year's end at the rate at which things are going now.
Okay, I got exactly 1 minute left. Just Julia, if you give us your website, how people can reach you.
Well, on Telegram, the easiest way is to find the Globus Expert Club on Telegram. It's available in Russian, French, and English. We also have a website and quite a lot of interesting talks that we host on Pan-African television.
All right. And you, my friend Arnaud Devaly?
You can reach me on Telegram and Invictus Lex.
I don't know where you got that name.
Like the rugby movie, yeah. Lex, L-E-X.
Right, right. All right. And we're going to get you two back. You're going to be like a regular couple on this show, all right? And I'm going to go out here with some music and come back with our friend from Pahina Dose. This is a great tune that I play every so often called Moscow Nights. It was called A Night in Moscow. It's an apolitical song, but this is the Red Army. You guys stay on for a minute so you can hear it. Why don't you start it right now? This is you know the song, guys?
Absolutely.
Right.
Of course.
Не слышны в саду даже шорохи, все здесь замерло до утра. Если б знали вы, как мне дороги подмосковные
no, Moscow Nights. I meant Moscow Nights, and what a beautiful tune that is. Randy Critical live on the fly on WBAI 99.5 FM in New York City. Stream us at WBAI.org. But here with Reggie Johnson, and now we are going deeply south. We're going past Venezuela all the way to Argentina with our good friend, the senior editor of Página 12, the #1 progressive newspaper daily in Argentina, and my dear friend who introduced me to the Madres de Plaza de Mayo back in 2004, and we've become very dear friends. And he's an author, and he knows architecture, and I always bring down a copy of his favorite magazine, World of Interiors. Welcome back, my friend. Can you hear us?
Hello, Randy. How are you?
All right. We're just working on your sound here. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you, but not very
All
loud.
right. How's
sorry.
that? How's that? Can you hear me okay?
That's
All right.
better.
We'll have to
So, what's up?
I don't know what's up. What's going on down there with that crazy president of yours? I understand he's going to send. He's the only country in the world that wants to send troops to the Gulf of Hormuz.
Oh, yeah, right. He said it publicly. Well, if Donald Trump needs troops, we are there for him. We'll send a regiment or two, which is all we can send. Our fleet is mothballed. We don't have a single ship working, thanks to his budget cuts, but we still have soldiers, so we'll send them to Iran if Donald needs them. It's crazy, my friend. I mean, really.
How bad is the economy?
Did you hear?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Tell me about the vote. The vote in the UN?
No, but this week, the United Nations voted saying that the slave trade was the worst human rights offense in history.
Yeah.
And there were 3 votes against that. The United States, Israel, and Argentina.
No.
We are so embarrassed.
You gotta be joking. The U.S. voted against saying it was the greatest crime. I mean, it's like a 600-year, ongoing crime wave. Slavery.
Exactly, and all the countries that actually traded slaves, like England, like Holland, like Portugal, Spain, they abstain because they don't want to pay compensations. That makes sense in a way.
For them,
but
economically
we
for
are
them.
voting against it because Donald Trump voted against it, and of course there is Israel voting against it. It was 3 against the whole world.
Wow, that's just amazing. I mean, this guy
It's
is.
incredible.
I mean, I thought we had a joke here in the White House, but it doesn't seem like it's much different down in the land of the Pampas.
Oh, yeah. And, we now are having what we saw coming, which is stagflation. We're having inflation about 3% per month.
Wow.
And the dollar, everything else is tacked to a peg and it doesn't move. So this country is becoming ever less competitive, more expensive to visit or buy goods from. We're losing markets. And you wouldn't believe how many, Randy, you would be surprised how many empty shops you see around Buenos Aires, how many factories shut down. The economy
Are you on a way of
slowly.
depression there? Is it like incipient depression happening? Are you in a recession or depression in your country?
People haven't had a raising month, and with that kind of inflation, your income is decimated. You see people that lost their jobs, and you see more homeless than ever.
Well, same
Suddenly
here.
You see
Same
whole
here.
Families all over the place sleeping in the streets. And you can tell, these guys are people that until recently had a roof over their heads. You can see their clothes, their belongings. These people are not hobos. They are working class families that lost everything. And it's becoming so common, so depressingly common. So we are in a recession, certainly. Probably we are heading into a depression. And we have also inflation. It's a perfect storm.
Right. I guess my dollar would be very strong down there. Is that what you're saying? I could buy like 100 empanadas for $5.
You're going to find Argentina rather expensive.
No, you got to be kidding me.
By year's end, it's going to be definitely like in the 90s. Again, a very expensive country to visit.
Yeah, when I was there in 2023, the last time when Roger Waters was working there, I think it was 2023. In November, and you remember Joe Laurier was there, and he interviewed you, and I was at your house, and I that week that I was there, or 8 days, I literally spent $100. If you recall, I sent pesos back to you. I spent like $100.
I remember that. Well,
for a whole week.
Cherish the memory, my friend, because you are going to spend $100 per day now.
You got to be kidding me! And I can't imagine what the airfare is with the price of jet fuel. Wow.
That's something convenient because tourists come, they are happy, they spend money, and we sell to the world. Our produce or products are inexpensive because of the country is not expensive and everybody's happy and got a job. Now it's the other way around. Everything here is very expensive. We are buying the most stupid imports because, for instance, you go and buy a can of sardines, and sardines imported from Thailand go for half the price of our sardines here. It's wacko.
Wow.
Again.
Wow. I don't eat sardines, and if you gave me a pound of them free, I wouldn't eat them. But it's I used to drive around in a truck, and the truck driver with the Assange truck, and the guy would eat sardines, and the smell inside the cab there was horrendous. I had to stick my head out the window, even in freezing weather.
Sorry, bad example.
All right, so wait a second. What?
But you get the point.
Yeah. So what about tourism? I suppose if the price is, even with inflation, you would think, like people from Brazil or Chile who've got money would be going there on vacation, but they're not. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, well, people with money, yes. I mean, you've been around Recoleta, so you see the rich from all over.
Right.
I mean, Chileans, Brazilians, Uruguayans, that people, they don't mind if it's expensive or cheap. What you have ever less is, the middle class tourist that is comparing, like, to give you an example, right now it would be like 4 times cheaper for you to go to Rio than to come to Buenos Aires.
Wow.
4 times.
But Rio's a dangerous city, or Brasilia is a dangerous city. I can't imagine that a safe city as it was when I was there, because I'd walk around your neighborhood late at night, no matter where you lived at the time. When you lived in Recoleta, it was like being in Oz. Very clean, and there was nobody around that would rob you.
Yeah,
except for those three guys. Except for those three guys at La Viela.
Not that safe.
Except for those three guys at La Viela. Remember those 3 guys at La Viela? Those rich guys that used to smoke.
Smoking a big cigar.
Yes, right. Are they still around?
I don't know. I haven't been to that place in a long time, man. Now I
still have the cups.
Life in a more normal area of town.
Yeah. All right. So tell me about your trip to Patagonia. How beautiful is Patagonia? And that's one place that people, if they have any money, should visit before the earth melts from a different kind of a winter.
Well, it's beautiful, very, very beautiful. But this summer here, January, we had these incredible fires there. Because some 80 years ago, this businessman went down there and covered the area with Oregon pine, which is perhaps the most flammable tree ever. And it's not native, of course, but they were in the timber business. They shut down the mills and they moved on and they left 1 billion pines all over. So they look great. The problem is they go up in flames. Somebody this summer didn't put out a fire properly somewhere in the mountains, and we had a fire to end all fires. They were weeks trying to contain it until there was a storm now in February that finally put down the flames. Now, except for a landscape of burnt out mountains, the place is paradise, you know. We were in...
Well, so is, what's the city way up north there that are in there?
Bariloche.
No, that's small. It's got one, it's like 2 syllables. I can't think of the name, where they found that woman and her child way up there, and they were a sacrifice from the.
That was Salta, probably.
Salta, yeah. That's it.
But that's
Salta.
That's near Bolivia. It's all the way up.
Right. Well, what else is happening? We got 3 minutes left. Tell us about your thoughts about the Orange Man.
I'll give you a good news. You know, last Tuesday, the 24th. Now. It was the 50th anniversary of the coup in 1976.
Right.
A coup that
our
President Milei loves to forget about and put down like it wasn't that bad.
Wow.
That's the horrible people that killed and disappeared 30,000 people.
Wow.
Now there was this march, and it was the largest march I've seen in my life. We tend to have very large ones here, but it was hundreds of thousands of people all over the country telling Milei that we don't forget that human rights are important and that we care and we remember. So besides, marking 50 years in your life of anything, I feel my age.
I know. I was there at the 40-year. I was there at the 40-year anniversary of the coup in 2016, and now I was there for the 30-year in the Plaza de Mayo, and an incredible speech. I think I still have it. It was raining that day, and it was a speech delivered by Tati Almeida, of the Linea Fundadora Madres de Plaza de Mayo.
Tati didn't speak this time because she's very old and infirm now, but her eyes still sparkle. She's great. She's a warrior.
Oh, I want to go down and see her, but I'm afraid to go down because I won't be able to afford to get back.
Buy a round trip ticket and stay with me here for free. Don't worry.
All right. I'll bring my own food. I'll bring my own food. How's that? I'll bring a lot of ramen.
Yeah,
I'll bring a lot of ramen.
Bring me some sardines.
Oh my gosh, some real sardines from Italy, right off the coast of Sicily. All right, so how do people? We're going to get you back on. You got to be my regular correspondent because we didn't get to anything political. We talked about that economy, but I want you to be my eyes and ears down there. Is the Trump flotilla, which is like a big pirate ship flotilla, is floating around, going to go back there and try to grab some more countries with gunboat diplomacy.
Yeah, and remember one item. In October, there are presidential elections in Brazil.
All right.
Yeah. And Lula is in trouble. That's something we need all of us to watch.
I will. We are. I really had to go ahead. You can start playing that. We're gonna play some music in the background. I got to get out. So people can reach you, and you'll be back in the next couple of weeks to give us an update on what's going on because there are a lot of questions I wanted to ask, but we didn't get to them. Can you pin yourself down to that, Sergio? All right.
Sure. All right. Anytime.
People can reach you where? Pahina Dose. You can get that on Twitter. Wherever.
You can find. Just type Pahina. That's Pagina and the number 12. All right. You can go to our website. WhatsApp. There are several ways of seeing my stuff.
I miss you, my friend.
Me
I miss
too.
you. I'll bring you some cheap empanadas from the Upper East Side when I come down. All right. I'll go to most.
Okay, looking forward.
They're only $8 a piece, or I'll bring them down. Save you some money. All right.
Okay.
All right.
That's a
All
good.
right. All right. That was Sergio Kiernan.